Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the We Go MTA Public Transit Committee meetings. Mr. Searcy.
Thank you,
How
Madam
about we do
Chairperson.
Operations and Finance? Yes.
Operations and Finance is in the House.
In the House.
And with that, I'm going to ask our CFO, Ed Oliphant, to lead us on to victory or wherever the hell we're going.
All right. If you will look on pages 2 and 3 of the committee pack, you have the financials through April the 30th of 2019. I will concentrate on the right-hand side. As you can see, we continue to lag on passenger fares as we have been talking about the fact that free transfers are being taken advantage of more than we anticipated, but we have accounted for that in the new budget year. Another pleasant surprise is the advertising. As you know, with the rebranding, we have cut back on the full wraps and things of that sort, but you can see the month was actually a very good month, and I believe we're going to still be in the maybe 85,000 to 100,000 in deficit, but I think that's a lot better than where we thought we'd be. I'll move down to the expenses. As you can see, labor and fringes is incredibly favorable right now, but as you will recall from last month, we had the CBA negotiations finalized, and in May you will see that come down between $400,000 and $500,000 because we're doing the back pay back for the whole year. As far as the services, again, that continues to be our overflow and access on demand primarily. There's a couple of others in there, but that's the primary reason for the unfavorable. Fuel and parts, materials, and supplies continue to help us, and I plan on those helping us in terms of our revenue deficits to balance out the year. And then the last comment is on the other category. We just are doing a good job of watching what we do in terms of travel training, and we are not having to lease as much equipment for repair as we have in the past. So we've seen good things there. On page 3, you have the balance sheet, and I will point out about 2/3 of the way down on that first column, you see the note payable. We are down to $6 million. We were as high as about $10 million, and we have come back down. We've received some of the funding, the preventive maintenance funding, and paid that down. We still have some to go, obviously. And then at the bottom of the page, the agings for accounts receivable and accounts payable. For disclosure purposes, on the accounts receivable, RTA does owe MTA about $437,000, and MTA has no payables. We've continued to stay on time in payments to RTA. And unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
What is the 14308?
14308, a lot of that is in our parts vendors. We typically have credits, and we have to, those will age out, but we will collect those back through future purchases.
All right. Thank you very much. Dan, you're going to give us the dashboard?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Looking at page 5, for ridership overall, we were up slightly for the month of April compared to last year. I do want to put that in context, however. It's always positive to see ridership going up, but we did have 1 additional weekday as well as 4 additional school days. So all other things being equal, we actually saw our productivity go down just a bit. For access, seeing the service go up about 5%, that's in line with expectations given those additional weekdays, the additional weekday and the additional school days. And again, I like to call out for the overflow. If we include the access on demand numbers as a total, then we were actually up about 20%, 24% for overflow third-party services on access. And a part of that has to do, and they're reflected in Ed's numbers as well, with the fact that we have had to outsource more trips than we had over the past few months due to manpower shortages, and that is something that staff are taking a focus on over the next few weeks to figure out what we can do in terms of both retention, but also recruitment and general absenteeism. It's something that that the industry is struggling with across the country, but that because of that means that we can't just sit idly by and let that sort of overwhelm us. So we are focusing on that as well. On access overflow, I just wanted to call out for on-time performance. We continue to see improvements. year over year with the new service providers on board, and that is in spite of the fact that we are giving them additional trips on overflow to make up for the manpower shortage.
They're responding positive.
Yes, sir. The capacity is now there to be able to absorb that additional demand, much more so than it was previously. Just wanted to call out briefly the customer care calls. And we had a little bit of a spike in the volume of calls and a decline in calls answered, and we think that was in large part in response to some of the events that happened in April, including the NFL draft, which did put a strain on our system. Going to page 6, nothing to call out significantly there. We're actually almost exactly flat for the year, and we continue to trend favorably in terms of our safety numbers for preventable accidents and accidents overall. We had a little bit of a spike in April, but when you're dealing with really small numbers, it's maybe more important to look at those longer-term trends, and so that's positive there. With that, unless there are any questions on the operations dashboard report, that concludes my report.
Questions?
No questions. Except when do we get to celebrate? You know? It's always like, it looks good, but
Yeah, sorry.
I'm so excited.
Thanks,
Yeah, maybe next month.
Maybe.
All right. Ed, we have some issues, some action items we need to take a look at. The first being our liability insurance renewal.
Yes, sir. On page 9.
Okay.
Hard to hear.
We are working on this mic right now. Thank you.
This better? Sounds better to me, yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay. On page 9, we have our annual renewal of liability insurance. We have an insurance broker that handles this for us. They go out into the market to look at replacing or renewing our $3 million policy with a $100,000 deductible that we carry. They did reach out to 7 companies, and 3 actually expressed no interest or basically did not do municipal type quotes for bus insurance. The other 3 actually just said, based on the quotes that we see you are currently at, we cannot compete with what you have. So RLI ended up being...
Flesh that out for us. I mean, tell us exactly what numbers you got back.
The only one of the 3 that did reply to say that had a quote, and that was between $6,500 and $8,500 a bus, which is basically double what we're paying right now. So RLI did give us this quote. It is about an 8.5% increase over the 8.3 we had last year. I will remind the board or the committee that we've had RLI for several years. They have kept their prices relatively flat up until this past year, but the whole overall market, as you can see by the quotes from the other company, the liability market for bus transportation, public transportation is going up. So basically, I want to ask the committee to recommend to the board that we do renew our current policy with RLI that will basically cost, based on the number of buses we have right now, approximately $884,000. That will vary depending on how many units we have at any given time, but that's basically the average that we would see over a given year, which again is about an 8.5% increase.
Did they indicate that the increase had anything to do with experience, specifically on our policy?
Not on us specifically. It was more market-driven as far as the overall.
Any other questions?
And you feel comfortable with RLI from your other experience, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, staff has asked the committee to recommend this to the board, and without objection, we shall do that.
Thank you, sir. On page 10, we have the renewal of our contract services for regional transportation services with the RTA. Again, this is a renewal. This is for the services that MTA provides to RTA in the southeast corridor between Davidson County and Murfreesboro. There are 2 contracts here that we are asking for approval. The reason being is RTA has 2 different sources for the contracts to be able to pay them. So there's one for the actual relax and ride or regional bus service. It's approximately 61.3 hours on a daily basis. That contract would come to about $1.7 million. It is at the same rate. As you will recall, we did go up significantly on RTA last year from about 106 to 109, so we felt that we would hold the rate flat for this year. The other contract is for the connecting service at the train station to take people away from the train station in the mornings. That's approximately 6.3 hours, again at the same rate, and that's about $175,000. We do have a fuel escalator included in the contract. As you know, we hedge our fuel, and the prices for this fiscal year will be about $2.22. So we start the escalator at $2.25. Every 25 cents creates an increase in the hourly cost of the service so our MTA can recompense their fuel costs. So I'm asking the committee to renew these two contracts for $1.7 million and $175,000 respectively.
Queries? All right. We shall accept your presentation as a recommendation to the board at that appropriate time.
Thank you, sir. My last action is on page 11. This is for the renewal of the State Easy Ride Services contract, again, between MTA and RTA. If you will recall, the board approved a contract with the state for the Easy Ride, for the payment of the Easy Ride services at $1.75 million. MTA is the primary on that contract. And in order for RTA to participate, we need this contract for them to be reimbursed. We do an analysis based on the last year's activity to make sure the $3.15, which we've stipulated here, and it has been in place for probably the last 2 or 3 years, as a reasonable rate for them to be paid. It did work out to be the same again for this coming year. So we're basically asking the committee to recommend renewal of the contract between MTA and RTA for the for the State Easy Ride services provided on RTA services.
Have we had any time recently had an audit of this particular?
We haven't had anybody do an audit. We, again, do an analysis, again, based on the actuals for the past 12 months to make sure, because RTAs are inherently a higher rate. It's a regional bus service. It's going to cost more as far as a fare goes than MTA services. And basically, we take the actuals and look at the number of rides RTA were provided to the program and what MTA provided at our respective rates, and it still works out to cover that cost.
All right. Thank you very much, Ed. Okay. We also have a MOU, with Metro regarding our IT services.
Yes, sir.
Dan,
Yeah.
you're gonna work on that?
That's me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, as you know, we have our new fare collection system, which we are working on currently, scheduled to come online later next year in 2020. And in support of that system, we are looking to utilize Metro Government Department of Information Technology Services to support us. The server equipment that we are purchasing that's going to host the back-end technology for this platform is going to reside at their main data center, and we are looking to utilize their services for database administration support. They currently do not have the resources necessary on staff to be able to support the implementation at the level that both they and MTA feel will be necessary, at least initially, to get the system up and running. And so we are looking to support the addition of a full-time equivalent specialist on their staff for an Oracle database system administrator for up to $534,000 over a 3-year period. The cost may be less depending on an analysis that will be conducted on a yearly basis to determine if there are cost-sharing opportunities with the position following the initial system implementation. It's possible, for example, after the first year, that the position is no longer required in a full-time capacity, at which point MTA and Metro ITS would review the roles and responsibilities of the position and come to a mutually agreeable cost-sharing percentage for the position. So,
Larry Ellison is giving us a grant on this.
sorry?
This is an Oracle administrator.
Yeah.
Can we get the CEO of Oracle to
Sure.
fund this for us?
Yes, that would be nice. So the official recommendation by staff is to recommend to the board to authorize the chief executive officer to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County's Department of Information Technology Services to fund a new full-time equivalent position of Information System Advisor 2, serving as in the capacity of Oracle Databases Administrator for up to 3 years for a not to exceed amount of $534,000. And the funding for the position for the first year is available within the capital project budget for the fare collection system, and funding for additional years would be allocated within the operating budgets for fiscal years 2021 and 22.
So are you not asking for more money, you're just asking for money that's already budgeted to be allocated?
Correct,
Is
for
that
the first
correct?
year. Yes.
Okay.
It's out of the capital dollars that are already here for technology.
Correct.
Yes. And so this person will be seated at Metro or with
They'll-
Metro employee.
They will be located at Metro. They'll be working out of the Metro Howard office building. But they will be available full-time to support this project and any associated activities that are needed by MTA to support the project, at least for the first year.
Okay.
And of course, the $534,000 is for all 3 years?
Correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to...
Amen, that's right. Yeah, and I'll be carrying your satchel. Yeah.
I'm going to be resigning this position.
Yeah, the $534,000 is for all 3 years, and it's a fully allocated cost. And it's also in the event that contractor services need to be utilized. It is likely that we will be able to hire a Metro employee in this capacity, and the cost will be a little bit less in that event.
Other queries? Hearing none, we shall make this recommendation during our board meeting. All right. Upcoming projects is, Steve, you want to chime in on this?
Just every month on pages 13 and 14, we provide the board with a list of upcoming procurements per our recent conversations, so we would ask and encourage members who know of vendors and contractors in these particular areas to make them aware. And it's an open bidding process, so they can get information on our website or by calling our procurement department. But unless there are any questions on the specific procurements, that's pretty much the extent of it.
That concludes, Madam Chairperson, the business of the Operations and Finance Committee.
Well, Mr. Searcy and Ms. Perrymore, job well done. Thank you very much. Ms. Miller, your turn. Nice committee.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will call the new Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee to order. We have 2 action items today for discussion, and as I'm sure everybody in the room understands, these are very serious, complex items, so we are here to have these discussions. The first is an authorization of 2019 fare changes and service reductions and adjustments. And Steve's going to walk us through it, but just to kind of frame it up, for the last 2 or 3 months, this board has been wrangling with the fact that there will be a $8.7 million budget shortfall for the Metro Transit Authority this year. And that became reality when Metro Council passed that budget last week. And we have had very lengthy discussions about this. This is not a happy day. This is really difficult. It's the first time I've ever encountered it as a member of the MTA board. And we've had discussions about how to approach this. And I really believe what you're seeing today does capitalize on the principles that we set forward as a board as we approached this, because it is our responsibility as the board to be a good steward of the resources that are given to us. And so that service cut became a fact of life. The general discussion was, let's do this as surgically as possible so that we impact as few customers as is humanly possible. And let's be sure we do this in a way that will impact our customers in the least way possible, which is difficult, and we know that. We also want the public to know that this board is still dedicated to all of the major things that we've always been. We are dedicated to pursuing dedicated funding for transit in the future, which is what we will need as a city. We are dedicated to longer service hours, greater frequency of hours, more crosstown routes. So all of those goals for the future do not go away. We just today are in a place where we have to make some choices because of a difficult situation with the budget. So with that, I will hand it over to Steve, who's going to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here. I would also say another principle was we want to talk to as many customers as is possible before we make a final vote. And we have had 200 people attend our public meetings. We've had 600 comments received. And we have also been working to identify those customers who truly will be left without service and trying very hard to get to one-on-one discussions with that small impacted group, because none of us wants to see that happen. So with that kind of rambling preamble, I will hand it over to Steve, who's going to walk us through, and then we'll have a discussion and come forth with a recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was an excellent introduction, so I will try to abbreviate my remarks to the extent possible. I'll be referring to in your committee packet pages 16 through 24, which provide the detail of the final service proposals. As you know, back in May, after extensive discussion, the board recommended a set of service reductions, realignments, consolidations, and the overall fare increase to the board to be put out for public comment. That public comment has occurred from May 23rd to today, effective today with the public comment period of the board meeting. We will then close the public comment period. To Janet's point, per board direction, staff went about trying to do this in as surgical a way possible to put us in a position that as we do add service in the future, because make no mistake, relative to cities this size, we do not have enough mass transit service. So at some point in the future, we need to be adding service hours. So the efforts of the staff, and frankly, I think they did a magnificent job, was to position us to be even more effective in the future as we add more service. Per the objectives you set, specifically, the goals were to assure social equity, to make sure that the folks who are most challenged in our system are harmed to the least extent possible, to continue to advance our principles of simplicity, to improve efficiency in our service, preserve service quality on our highest ridership routes. Several of our corridors are extremely high ridership, to eliminate or at least reduce some of the redundancies in our system, and to eliminate extremely underperforming services. The material you have in front of you highlights some of the efforts in public engagement since we met with you last. Janet touched on it, that we reached out through a number of public meetings. We also reached out through social media. We received a number of comments through our customer care line, online forum, email, written forum, you name it, that totaled to just under 600, and in a variety of different ways. As a result of the work of our staff, about 78% of our current riders will see little to no change in their current rider profile or how they take their trips. Essentially, their service sees little or no change. About 20% will continue to have service, but may have to alter their trip pattern some. May mean a bit of a longer walk to a bus stop, may require a transfer where none was required before. Conversely, with some of the changes in the route alignments, we may have some folks who transfer today that will now have one-seat rides. Unfortunately, as we've identified it, 2% of our current boardings, passenger boardings, really won't have a viable transit alternative. And one of the things I would highlight when we get into the comment period is we will have staff in the room today if individual riders want to meet with specific folks to figure out what their alternatives might be when a service change goes into effect. The comments we received really ran the gamut from very specific individual route and stop locations, where buses were routed, to more general. We obviously heard a lot about how transit service impacts people's daily lives and how crucial it is to whether it's getting to work or getting to church or getting to medical appointments. So we heard a lot of that. Some of the recurring themes were an understanding of the position we're in, but frankly a fear of what the future might hold. Because to tie back to Janet's comments earlier, to some extent we could be somewhat surgical, but to be frank, any future service reductions would really cut into meat, bone, and muscle of this system and would be extremely difficult for the community to absorb. So really emphasizing that need to pursue dedicated and reliable long-term funding really comes to the forefront over the next few months and years. It's important to note that among the comments, some folks in the same service area were conflicted about what the options might be, maybe preferring a new option and some resisting, and wanting to stick with the old. So in some areas there wasn't what you might call consensus. Generally speaking, some of the issues that we received a number of comments were a preference to preserve our existing change card system. In fact, a number of people expressing a willingness, if they could keep the change card system, to go to the $2 fare that is in the current recommendation. There were a lot of specific concerns expressed all over the city about the importance of our service to the students in Metro Nashville Public Schools and making sure we retain services to the schools and to school students. As you know, one of the most significant recommendations is the elimination of the Music City Circuit. Although service on Jefferson Street, TSU, will be sustained essentially in the same configuration as the former Route 29. We did get a number of comments from folks who were desiring to keep that free fare in place on that route. On the other hand, we also got feedback, including from some of our operators, that putting a fare back would be advantageous. So again, there wasn't necessarily a consensus of opinion. Again, a concern over losing one-seat rides, where now we may be forcing transfers. A lot of people who have been following this and came to the hearings or expressed their opinion in other ways have been following the story and this issue. So there were a lot of concerns about how will we fund public transportation in the future, and a recognition that it's going to be extremely difficult if we have to compete against other very significant priorities in metro government. Broadly, coming out of that input, we literally identified probably a dozen what I'll call small changes that we're putting into effect that kind of fall below the board policy level. It might be a minor routing adjustment, might be an adjustment to the location of a stop that we can incorporate in based on that feedback. Some of the broader comments or input that we received that we validated against data that led us to recommend some minor adjustments, relatively minor adjustments in the original proposal. First of all, with respect to the fare, our original proposal was to increase our current base fare of $1.70 to $1.85. Coming off of the comments that, $1.85 is really an odd number, I'm very likely to just put two single-dollar bills into the box anyway. Can we keep the change cards and go to the $2 fare? We revised the proposal recommendation to incorporate that suggestion for a couple of reasons. Number one, just simply based on that rationale, but also it raises about an additional $310,000, which would allow us to restore some services that I'll touch on in a minute that were originally targeted for reduction or elimination. Those include the retention of Sunday service on the rerouted Route 25 Midtown. What we found off comments we received was when we looked at the ridership profile with the restructured route, portions of the route that it will now be taking over actually had relatively high levels of Sunday ridership. So there was actually quite a bit of validity in that comment. Retention of midday service on the Route 77 Thompson connector. You'll recall the Thompson connector is a relatively new service of WeGo Public Transit, and we got a number of comments relative to its growing ridership and its utility in that area. And again, on verification of data, we see even though the ridership levels aren't necessarily where we need them now, they are trending up, and they're trending up fairly significantly. Extended span on the Route 8, 8th Avenue South route. If you'll recall in the details of the proposal, we're essentially switching the endpoints of the Route 8, 8th Avenue South, and Route 17, 12th Avenue South. And the concern came up from a number of customers that that endpoint on the 12th Avenue South, the current 12th Avenue South route, is pretty productive later at night. And again, verifying that data, that's an accurate statement. So we're recommending that the Route 8 service hours be extended to more closely match the Route 17. Although we didn't receive a significant number of comments regarding the discontinuation of the Music City Circuit, apart from the Jefferson Street segment and confirming that service at TSU would still be available, we did get some confusion on current Star rail riders about possibly losing the connection between Riverfront Station and Central, as well as the State Office Complex. That was frankly just some weaker communication on our part. That piece will be retained, but it will become a service of the Regional Transportation Authority. So you'll recall earlier in Walter's committee, Ed presented you with a contract renewal with RTA for two services, the Rutherford County Commuter Service and the West End Train Connector. Next month with both RTA and MTA, we're presenting, and it will be reflected in both agencies' budgets, that a similar contract for the connection between Riverfront and Central will also be reinstated, so that will be a cost neutral to the MTA. The expense of that service will essentially be offset with RTA revenue. With respect to the fare proposals, I draw your attention to pages 21 and 22. And by the way, in the packet, any of the way that the table is laid out, it summarizes each original proposed change to each route, and then in the far right column recommends what we're calling the final proposal. And in many cases, the proposals match. Where there is a difference, for instance, at the bottom of page 18, relative to the 25 Midtown route, you will see bolded in yellow any recommended change from the original proposal. Turning to pages 21 and 22, the fare proposal. The left column of this table describes each current fare product. The second column over is what our current price is for that product. The third column over was the original proposal that went to public hearing this past month. And the fourth column over is the final recommendation that staff is presenting today. And essentially it reflects that change from $1.85 to $2 for the base fare, with commensurate changes in pass and ticket prices. And again, that is predominantly for us to be able to support those service enhancements relative to the original proposal. Relative to access, it maintains the practice of essentially charging twice the fixed route fare on access. And subsequent to this proposal, we did circulate it through our APAC committee. We had quite a bit of spirited exchange on that. So I will tell you there's definitely some opposition to that, particularly on the access side. And I suspect you'll probably hear some of that in the public comment process. But these are essentially the new fare recommendations. And then going into pages 22 and 23, the longer-term recommendations on fare structure coinciding with our new account-based smart card and mobile payment system remain essentially unchanged from the original proposal. Page 23 also talks about our service and fare change equity analysis. According to our federal regulations, and a condition of our federal funding is that anytime we do a significant service adjustment or fare increase, that we review it for social equity. Does it have disproportionate impact on minority or low-income neighborhoods and individuals? Federal government has a very specific process that you're to follow for that. And you can see in the report, and again, largely based on the goals set by this board in terms of how we examine service changes, you will see that the analysis shows that the proposed changes would have 9.1% less impact on minority persons and 4.7% less impact on low-income persons than on non-minority and non-low-income persons, and that the proposed fare changes would have 6.8% more impact on minority persons and 2% more impact on low-income persons than non-minority and non-low-income persons, and those are well within the federal guidelines of disparate impact. Yes, yeah, precisely. We basically look at things like census tracts and see what those impacts are. And in terms of fares, Hannah, it's generally regarded as typically low-income riders will be more likely to pay the cash fare, higher income riders the 31-day passes, so it really looks at the impact of pass prices relative to single ride prices. All of that, at the conclusion of all of that, the other pieces of this is in terms of our Access on Demand program. We are recommending that that service become a permanent part of WeGo's service portfolio moving forward. You will recall that it has been a pilot program, so until a decision is made by this board to make it permanent, it sort of exists in limbo. We are recommending that it become permanent with the associated fare change recommended, as well as a change in a slight reduction in the maximum mileage before a premium fare would kick in. In terms of timing, changes that are approved by this board today, fare changes would go into effect on August 1st. Service changes would be made effective on September 29th. And obviously, between the date of adoption by this board and the implementation date, a large part of staff effort will focus on public education and orientation to the new fare structure and to alternate service availability. I'll just conclude my report by reiterating my admiration to our staff, who put a huge amount of both time, effort, as well as creativity into trying to design something that, first of all, minimized negative impact, but also made our system more efficient and, in the long term, more effective as we're able to add back services. I think that they met the challenge that you laid before them in a fantastic way, and it not only addresses our current budget shortfall, but also positions us to be more effective in the future. On the other hand, having said that, I have a few cautionary notes. First of all, I would remind folks, and board members hear this quite a bit, as do I, people complain about, why do you have so many empty buses? Why do you have so many empty buses? Fact of the matter is, every bus is important to somebody. And what might look like an empty bus is a crucial method of transportation for at least one or two or three people. So it's important to remember that everybody relies on our service, no matter what it is, no matter what its performance characteristics are. Second, I'll come back to where Janet took us originally. As a community and as a region, we need to pursue a long-term, dedicated, and reliable funding source to avoid a situation where we are frankly placing you in this position year after year, or placing our council and our mayor in a position of having to choose between transit in schools or transit in public safety. We are now one of only 3 cities out of the top 40 in population that don't have such a dedicated and reliable funding source. And we continue to drop in ranking in terms of the amount of service, transit service per capita. So it's something that we definitely have to take seriously and make a push for. So with that, Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
I have a question. Regarding the Music City circuit, did you get any pushback from folks in the tourism industry at all?
Not to any notable degree, again, other than the rail connection.
Is there any research about what was the kind of the ratio of tourists versus residents that used it?
Yeah, in ridership, you may recall, probably about a year ago, Felix did a presentation on the circuit, and it's about 35 to 40% tourist relative to, for lack of a better word, local folks, and that could be state employees going out for lunch. It could be just general folks in the system, connecting to jobs, south of Broadway from coming into Central, that type of thing. The other thing that...
It could be a good revenue opportunity since the scooters are going away.
Yeah. Hannah, speak into the mic a little closer, would you?
I said it could be a good revenue opportunity since the scooters are going away, right?
One of the things that's always challenged the circuit, and it's especially true during the big visitor events, is it's really been kind of notoriously unreliable because of downtown traffic. It's almost on a perpetual detour. In fact, Glenn and I were meeting yesterday, and you can see the circuit out of his office window. And I said, hey, it's actually running on the right street today, which isn't all that often. So I do think that part of any long-term conversation, really it affects the entire transit system. We really do have to revisit with the city and a whole lot of other stakeholders the issue of downtown circulation, downtown transit priority, which compromises our system. The other thing, Hannah, I would say that was interesting when we were looking at some of the data in support of what we were hearing from the public was with respect to the Jefferson Street segment of the circuit and the free fare going away. You'll recall that we had a lag time of probably about 3 or 4 months after we reinstituted free transfers between the time free transfers went into effect and the time that the free circuit was extended up to TSU and Jefferson Street. And what we found was about 3/4 of the folks who were using that bus were actually transferring from other buses. So in essence, they were paying a fare, on a different bus, and then getting that free transfer anyway. So to that extent, the effect of going back to charging a fare may be somewhat mitigated. And the other thing that I would remind everybody of is in terms of duplication, doesn't mean that you can't get from one end of downtown to the other on mass transit or on WeGo public transit. We have probably half a dozen routes that'll take you north to south or south to north. It's just a matter of hopping on and, of course, paying a fare.
I'd really would like to hear from all of the board members on this because it's so important. A couple of clarifications. For the public in the room, we will take comments during the public comment period at the opening of the board meeting, so we have a spot for that. And also, I wanted to emphasize that by changing our recommendation on the fare increase, that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that adds back in $310,000 so that we can add back key service that were in the original cutting block, right? So the
25 Midtown
25
Sunday,
Midtown.
the 8 hours extension,
Yeah.
and the
Thompson connector.
Thompson connector midday.
Right, so that's what that change in our proposal brought back, those levels of service. Okay, Glenn, ask your question. You got it.
Steve, I'm going to go back, and I have some questions about the fare as well. So the original fare, or the current fare, is $1.70.
Base fare, yes.
And we talked about $1.85.
That's what it was in the
And
original.
the proposal is $2.
The revised proposal.
Revised proposal. Can you go over how that is in relation to the change card and how that fleshes out?
Sure. So the original proposal would have taken us from $1.70 to $1.85 cash fare for a single ride, and also would have eliminated change cards. And the honest truth is we heard pretty early on in some of the meetings, and I'll paraphrase, well, who are you kidding? I'm going to put $2 in the fare box anyway. You're not going to give me change, so you're essentially charging me $2 anyway. And there's some truth to that. In the modeling that Ed and the folks who were looking at fares did, we assumed that there would be about $65,000 or so coming out of that for all intents and purposes overpayment by customers who just didn't choose or just didn't have exact change, and they would have put $2 in the box and 15 cents would have essentially come back to us as opposed to going out in change card. So that was a legitimate comment from customers of, hey, just come clean, charge me, what have you. But that $65,000 was factored into the original service proposal. So to keep it at $1.85 and keep change cards would have meant we would have had to do something else to balance that out. So after a fair amount of discussion in-house, we thought that a viable middle ground was, well, if we go to $2, we keep the change cards, until essentially the change card is based with the stored value account-based fare system, so that you'll essentially have your change card either on your smart card or on your mobile payment, that this was a viable middle ground. And again, to Janet's point, also to help restore some of those services.
What about, so the proposal is from $1.70 to $2, keeping the change card, correct? What about the access ride?
Right. The current access fare for our standard access ride system is $3.40. It has historically been twice the fixed route fare, so if you just take the $1.70 times 2, that is the maximum allowable under federal law for ADA mandated services. And you'll recall, access exceeds the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act insofar as a county-wide service, where the ADA only covers services close to our fixed route coverage network. In the original proposal, that fare would have gone, again, twice the fixed route fare to $3.70. Access on demand, which is considered a premium service, so it's not subject to the same ADA price limits, originally would have gone to $6.50. That original proposal, we did brief the APAC, or Access Ride Passenger Advisory Committee, ahead of time, and they were generally supportive. They understood the need, and frankly, they were appreciative that we weren't looking at pulling in, the geographic boundaries of access, which is always going to be a concern. About 2/3 of our access riders trips take place within the mandated ADA service area, and about 1/3 fall into that outer county area. In the revised proposal, really, again, just in keeping with the twice the fixed route fare, plus, for all intents and purposes, the extra charge is an incentive for folks who can use fixed route to use it. As you all know, accesses are really expensive. We average about $37 per trip, even if we're only getting $3.40 or $3.70 back or $4 back. So it's an incentive to use fixed route if you can. And the sense on access on demand was, again, just keeping that premium separation a little bit more. So that was the thought process, Glenn. And again, per some of the exchanges and the communication, I certainly wouldn't say, I think, and I don't want to speak for the APAC committee or its chair, but I think generally folks were understanding of the original fare proposal. I think there'd be a much greater disparity of opinion on the revised proposal, specific to access.
I was just doing a calculation here. So how much does that generate going from 340 to 370 and 370? I mean, like,
Relative to the 300?
to the total fares that we collect.
Right. It's relatively small. And in fact, relative, as Janet was saying, the extra $310,000 or so that the revised proposal would generate, the access fare piece of that is a relatively small chunk. Ed, I don't know if you have an order of magnitude, but probably, I'd guess on order of magnitude 10%.
Right.
Relative to the whole.
10% or less.
So $30,000, $20,000 or $30,000. So from a pure financial perspective, not terribly material to the overall budget.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we look closer at that. I mean, it's as we talked about, our first priority was assuring social equity, and for a more vulnerable individuals who have to depend on the access ride, the individual access ride. I think that's. If it's not a huge impact, maybe we look closer at that increase.
So Steve, is that something that would be acceptable if the board decided to say, okay, let's keep the access ride increase at the original proposed increase versus the new proposal, that would not appreciably impact
It would-
budget. Does that make sense?
It would not affect us. We wouldn't go back and say, well, now we can't do the 25 on Sunday, or it wouldn't affect that proposal. And frankly, even on staff, we were conflicted about it. So I can honestly tell you it would not have a material impact otherwise if you were to amend the final.
And with keeping the fare or the change card,
The $2, we would have to keep the fixed route as is, because that's,
correct.
to Ed's point, 90% or more of that $310,000.
So this would just be the access ride, if we, that would be a motion. Okay. that's-
Yeah, if you wanted to amend
I
it
would be
to,
supportive of that.
Okay. All right, I would be supportive of that. Let's see what Gail says. Yes. So we would go 340 to 370 rather than $4 on
We would stay at what we originally presented to public comments. And I guess my comments too were going to be about access ride, but I think we've sort of covered it sufficiently. I don't know, anybody down at this end?
I'm trying to determine whether I want to be the Grinch.
Well, and I wonder, going back to the conversation about change cards, I mean, people who use access rides, are they going to pay $4 and not get 30 cents back, or, eventually, or is it, looks like it's...
Yeah, change cards would be, if we went to the higher, I wouldn't recommend that we make, if the board decides to stay at 370 for access and 650 for access on demand, I would not recommend that we eliminate change cards. I would recommend that we stay consistent system-wide.
Yeah. How long are we pulling that together? You got anything to say?
Let's keep the conversation, then we'll kind of come up with any recommendations.
Yes.
Well,
Come back to you.
I hear the sentiment regarding wanting to keep the access ride program at the same price point. The problem potentially is that as we continue to go forward dynamically, to have a static point of revenue may wind up being inconsistent with that. And although we may not be able to foresee the problems at this point.
Hey, Walter, can I clarify? I think what
Yeah.
we're proposing is not that we don't increase access ride, but that we increase it only as the first proposal indicated to 370 rather than to 4.
I understand.
You got that?
No, I
Okay.
understand fully.
Good.
And I'm suggesting that $4 price point may actually be a more rational and reasonable figure. Now, yeah, and I would like to hear what public comment says about this issue before I want to revert back to the first change.
Okay, that's great. What was your question, Glenn?
My question was, what did we hear through the public comment period that happened to now?
Relative specifically to this?
Specifically to this issue?
Yeah. Well, I think largely, some of it was a recognition along the lines, so some of those weighing in favor was along the lines of what Walter's saying. And also a recognition by folks who understand, particularly in the APAC group, which is pretty well informed about how Access operates, knowing that, fares cover a very small chunk, so there was a sense of we need to do what we can. There was also understanding that from a service perspective, Access really didn't take a hit. So and I'm not going to put words in folks' mouths, and I'm sure, and I hope we get folks to speak up on this issue. But I would say it was in the sentiment of we need to do our part. On the flip side of it is, again, coming back to the equity issue, a 60-cent increase on a $3.40 fare for people on low, fixed, limited incomes is a big chunk, especially when you're looking at folks who are using it 2, 3, 4 times a day. That's a big hit. So, and that was a record, because it would be a large percentage increase in that fare to go from $3.40 to $4.
So why don't, here's an idea. Let me know if I'm getting out of the bounds of what I am authorized to do here. Why don't we bring this to the full board, and if the full board wants to pull out, after we've heard public comment, if the full board wants to pull out Access Ride as a separate item to discuss and vote on, that way it's not all lumped in together, and we can have that discussion after we've heard public comment. How does that sound? Does that sound all right? Okay. Other questions for Steve, or questions about just the whole package here, because we will need to make a recommendation from the NICE committee to the full board in order to get to the final vote at the board level. Other questions, Walter?
One other matter, yeah. Now, we are changing the geographic coverage from 16 miles to 13 miles.
Well, it's not really the geographic coverage, Walter. It is for access on demand, not for the regular access. Under the pilot program, there is a, let me find this, here it is. So currently, we allow a maximum trip distance of 16 miles before a premium charge kicks in. Under this proposal in the permanent program, that premium charge would kick in after a 14-mile trip.
14 miles, yeah.
Okay.
And that's laid out on page 21 of the package.
All right, other questions and comments? I think we'll have more discussion about this when we get it to the full board, but any questions or clarification points for Steve? Okay. So Glenn, if you are good as my fellow committee member here, do you feel good about us? Let's go ahead and make the recommendation to the full board as presented, understanding that we may pull out the access ride piece at the full board and modify that piece of it. Does that sound right? Okay. Okay, so if there's no other discussions or questions, what we will do is the NICE committee is going to recommend to the full board that the fare increase associated with the $2 base fare for August 1st, the access on demand becomes a full service of WeGo. Service changes would come in place September 29th. And that by December 31st, 2020, we would eliminate change cards. So that's a phasing out over time.
With the new system. People will still be able to have change on the stored value system.
Right, okay. All right. Committee feels good about that, then we will recommend that to the full board. I'm confusing myself now. So, okay, we will make that recommendation. Thank you all for that discussion. And we have one other quick item of action for the board, which has to do with the continuation budget, and I will head it to Ed for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, this discussion perfectly dovetailed into this action item. It was kind of hard to come up with the final budget until we knew what the board was going to decide. So the logical choice here is for us to recommend to the committee, to recommend to the board, to do a continuation budget based off the fiscal year 19 budget. This is not something unusual. The RTA pretty much does this on an annual basis because a lot of their revenues are tied into the different cities and counties, and they don't necessarily have their numbers finalized. So we will operate. It's not a huge problem to operate based off of last year or fiscal year 19's budget. So we are asking the committee to approve a continuation budget until such time, which would likely be July or August, once these decisions are hammered out, to come back to the committee and board with a fiscal year 20 budget.
I've never done that.
I've never done that before. Glenn, any?
Certainly supportive of that.
Sure. Any other comments or questions? Sounds like a logical thing. Okay, in light of that, then the NICE committee will recommend to the board that we approve a continuation budget. And then we'll come back in either July or August and get our new budget in place and be ready to go. I think that's a prudent thing. So, okay, with that, that is the end of the agenda for the New Initiatives Committee. So we will adjourn that committee, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Miller. So that concludes our committee, and we'll move into our official board meeting. But if we could have a 5-minute break so we can sort of figure out public comments. If anybody has not filled out a form for public comments, the forms are outside the door. Please do so. Also, we're getting lots of friends to come visit us today, which is a good thing. So I'm going to need people to sort of fill in the seats a little bit so everybody can have an opportunity to sit. So we'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Today we will call to order the MTA WeGo board meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the May 23rd, 2019 minutes. If I can have a motion for approval.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If there is no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next, we go into our public comment section, and I just want to outline how we're going to do it. Typically, we don't have these many numbers, so if everybody can just, we're going to follow this clock. Everyone will have 3 minutes, and no more than 3 minutes. Also, I'm going to call 3 names at one time. So if 3 people can just come together, that will help us in terms of facilitating public comments. Additionally, if someone needs a handheld microphone to be able to speak from their seat, when I call your name, just let me know, or raise your hand that you would need a handheld mic, and we can go from there as well. Everybody good? Okay. Again, we appreciate all of you being here today. So the first 3 names are Peter O'Connor, Buddy Haggerty, and James Thomas. And we do have one person that needs a handheld mic, and that's Mr. Haggerty, correct? Okay, and he's in the front row. And so the next 3 that should really be thinking about when they come up in line is Rhonda Clark. Oh, you're, okay, Rhonda, I'm sorry. Okay, John Bull and Adam Nicholson. You don't have to go up yet, Mr. Bull. You're in the next 3. I just thought maybe y'all could just be getting ready to tee it up a little bit, right? Think about it. All right. No, you're fine where you are. We're going to bring you a microphone, okay? And then you could just speak from right where you are if that's okay with you. Okay, I appreciate it very much. Mr. Thomas.
How do? It's been a while. I've missed a couple months. Just want to let you know on several buses in March, I noticed that either charging ports weren't working or that there's no Wi-Fi. Buses number 1815, 1905, 1813, 193, 1903, 1908, and 1907. On the 22nd of March, bus number 1824, the armrest is missing from the front area on the door side. And I was like, must be a maintenance issue with that. On the 28th of March, bus number 1918, the Wi-Fi was not working. There's a hole in the floor, and you can see like the wood right through the hole. On 414, bus number 730, the driver would not let me raise the seat up, so he said he needed a seat for his customers, and that got me thinking, is he going to stay that way, do that way when it comes to wheelchairs coming on the bus? Because that's a wheelchair area too. And just recently, this past month, I noticed that one of the early morning buses that leave from the jailhouse heading to downtown 52B had trash all over the floor and trash on the seats, which not really acceptable and looks good to customers. Looks like someone's slacking down the job to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. If we can provide Mr. Haggerty with a handheld mic in the front row. Oh, Mr. Haggerty, they're on the way, so we'll come back to you, okay? Mr. Bull?
Peter O'Rourke, please. The Peter O'Rourke, please.
He's somewhere.
I'm John Bull. I live at 370 Wallace Road. I'm a frequent rider. I ride the bus typically 4 to 8 times a day. The the fares and schedule changes is what I want to address. Very detailed report. The staff did a very good job of working that up and responded to community comments. Effort. Dedicated revenue stream is just simply needed. We're here where we are because there is not one at this point. I see that the board is taking a great deal of interest into the access on demand which is a really needed program. It's a wonderful program. And the fare going up to 7, hitting people, well, y'all know where I'm at that. Y'all have heard me before. Alternative transportation modes have been espoused by some people who are mayoral candidates, which to me means bicycles and greenways and sidewalks. We're just not up to that. Low 20s every year, people are killed walking on the road. 19 so far this year have died. Nashville's just not ready for that. Uber lost $1 billion last year. They may break even in 2025, maybe. Crosstown connectors, I'm glad the alternate proposal is to restore Sunday service on Route 25 and midday activities back to normal on Route 77. That's pretty much it. Again, if you can say anything, dedicated revenue streams, extended hours and frequencies, just what are needed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Mr. O'Connor? And we are at 3 minutes, Mr. O'Connor. Thank you.
Thank you all for having this time. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. I've got more things to mention than normal. Anyway, one of the first things that are going to be a real concern, and Steve touched on a couple of things earlier, one is on the change cards. Is there going to be something replacing the change cards when they're phased out? Because people who may come to a bus with, say, $5, $10, and don't have a chance to get change are not going to want to deposit $5 into the fare box and not get change back. Okay, so this is going to be a very important concern. Also, I need how many hands, the funding that comes to the NTA, how many hands does this funding go through before it gets to the NTA? And where does the funding originate before it comes here? Also, the fare products discounts, the first proposed changes would probably be better because it's, as Steve touched on that as well, saying that it's going to be a big chunk to people who are on fixed incomes and really can't afford, anything more than that. It's going to be difficult enough for them just to make the first proposed change. Also, getting to some of the other stuff, the bus stops at the Nolensville Walmart on both sides police really seriously need to step up presence more so, because people who are, police come there, the people sitting there drinking, doing their drugs, and intimidating people waiting or getting off the bus don't like being at that stop. And a recurring situation with these people. They get arrested or something, they keep coming back, and coming back. Also, again, I know that budget cuts, but still, there's more people coming into the city. We really still need to consider longer bus hours and matching customer service hours. And it's a real serious matter because I know a lot more people that are getting more and more concerned with that. And also, after customer service hours, I'm calling Access Ride in order to get information for buses. And I've been lately getting people with Access Ride saying, no, we don't transfer anybody to anything. And I was like, well, how are we supposed to get information? We really need these things taken care of. And scooters are now starting to clog up the walkways at MCC. All right,
Thank you. Oh, that makes noise. That stops me from being that person, right? Rhonda Clark.
Okay, I think I can talk loud enough for the mic.
Can everybody hear? No. They can't hear you, so what? Can you? Okay. While she's coming up, the next three in line are Adam Nicholson, Jessica, is it Dalpin? Oh, Jessica. And James Brown. Oh. Just a second. Here's that mic.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, my name is Rhonda Clark, and I've lived in Nashville, Tennessee, in Davidson County for 23 years. So I've used every form of transit there is, private, public, para. I'm here to, first of all, thank the board and all the different committees and the APAC committee for advocating for the on-demand service. My opinion is that the bus fare, the fixed route bus fare, needs to be $2. Access ride needs to be $4. And I just told Mr. Bland that I think the on-demand service, the miles should stay at $16 and go to $8. I may have a bounty on my head by the time I leave here. But let's face it, folks, you can't go anywhere in this town for $2. You can't go anywhere in this town for $4. You can't go anywhere in this town for $8. You can sit in traffic and waste $2 worth of gas sitting in traffic. And for those of you that are saying, what's going to replace the change cards? We may not have change, if we have $5. You plan accordingly. I plan every single day before I take my trips. I plan everything I do. Yes, life happens. I get it. But those of you who can use the fixed route bus have a much easier time getting on the fixed route bus than someone like me. So thank you to this board. Please keep the on-demand service, and if I can be of any help to keep it, I will help you.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Let's go.
Mr. Haggerty is in the front row, and he's up right now. If you raise your hand, Mr. Haggerty, she'll bring you over the microphone. And you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I have about 3 complaints. One is when I call in and set up my rides, they read it back to me like they're supposed to, but come date that my rides is due, oh, you're not, say like if we do it from, say, I want to be there by 3 o'clock. Okay. Oh, you're not scheduled until 4 to 4:30. Now that's ridiculous. Because, like I said, they read it back to us like they're supposed to, and it's right. So whoever's taking it off of the computer needs to learn how to read, evidently. Another thing, there has been more than one time we get standing out there waiting on our rides. We call in at the end of our half hour. Where's our ride at? Oh, we don't have anybody in your area. Now, we set up our rides well in advance. So what do they mean, we don't have anybody in your area? That's ridiculous. That's my comments for right now.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Haggerty. Mr. Nicholson, Adam Nicholson.
Hello, I'm Adam Nicholson. I live at 7. Oh, sure. That makes sense. All right. My name's Adam Nicholson. I live at 722 Crescent Road here in Nashville. I'm a Nashville native, so I've seen the city grow a lot over the years. I've seen a lot of transit improvements over the years. I remember when transfers were at Dedrick Street out in the elements. So we get some improvements here or there when we take them, and I look forward to more transit stations down the road. This is a big challenge that I really commend the board on being able to meet, and everybody at WeGo to take such care in these proposals to keep as much service as possible. I'm here on behalf of Transit Now Nashville. We're an all-volunteer, grassroots, nonprofit organization that advocates for transit with a mission to engage the Nashville community to promote a vibrant transit system. So there are a few major points we would like to endorse especially. The emphasis on the continued need for dedicated funding, implementation of new fare card technology no later than December 31st, 2020, adjustments to the recommended fare increase to maintain more service. As painful as that is, it seems necessary. It is our hope that the hard work WeGo has done to meet this challenge will help keep Nashville on track in becoming a city with an ever-improving transit system and an even better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Dobbin.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You're in an unenviable position today, but I want to take my time and recognize WeGo staff for taking their time and making this a people-first, data-supported proposal. They could have just looked at the data and made sweeping cuts, but they didn't. They dug deep and had numerous conversations with their community members. I am incredibly impressed with their dedication to and compassion for their riders and the city they serve. I'll add that public transit and transportation services in a city the size of Nashville demand and deserve a sustainable, dedicated funding source. This Metro budget cycle proves that. The burden of funding and a service as essential as public transit should not rest on the back of the city's general funds that also has to address affordable housing, education, public health, public safety, and I go on. All of these services residents have come to support and rely on. Public transit is no different. Without transit, how many of our neighbors wouldn't be able to access services, education, jobs, social life? Mobility is key. It is freedom, it is opportunity, it is access, it is health. And too often it is the difference between obtaining an education or not, of getting a job or not, improving your social, economic well-being or not. It's essential. To reiterate, thank you to WeGo staff and leadership for showing up this time. You didn't put your heads down. You put your heads together to overcome a challenge handed down to you. And this time, teamwork made the dream work in some ways. With that said, my sincere hope is that we don't come to you asking you to do it again. I hope we can find sustainable, dedicated funding for public transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dobbin. James Brown. And up next is Steve. I can't read. What is that? There we go. Ryder, Steve Ryder, and Nancy Lee Holmes, and Michael Milliner. So next three can get ready. I'm sorry. Mr. Brown, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'd like to propose an alternative plan altogether. And that's that we just get rid of MTA and we all use scooters. No. You don't like that? Well, I'm here to talk today about the $4 access ride plan. there's kind of a misunderstanding between how much people who use the regular bus system and how much people who use Access Ride really have to pay. So if we moved it up to $4 and $2 individually, there's something that you can use when you're on the regular fixed route, and that's called a monthly bus plan. And as a matter of fact, most people who use the bus on a regular basis get a monthly bus plan. It's about $55 a month. For Access Ride users, we don't get that. And it's a big, huge loss for us. You know, I kind of put together a little budget plan for a single mom who's disabled. If she went to work 23 days in July, that would be 2 trips a day. That would come out to almost $200. If she wants to go to church 7 times, if she wants to go to the grocery store 4 times, if she wants to go see 4 of her kids' baseball games, it's going to come out, and the doctor a couple times, it's going to come out to about $330. So, you know, if we've got a new bus pass, it's going to be $65, you know, and you can ride as much as you want. But if you get what I just outlined, if you do that particular plan, it's $330. So $65 if you're not disabled, $330 if you are. So there was a protest song by James Brown back in the 60s, and it was called, "I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door and I'll get it myself." And so there's been a lot of door opening here in Nashville for people with disabilities. Please don't close and slam the door on us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to take about a 2-minute break to go through some of these comments, if you all can just give me that moment. Mr. Ryder, you're up. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for your patience. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Steve Ryder. I just wanted to say you have a challenging assignment. Cutting $8.7 million out of your existing budget is more than 10%. And so fare reductions, or excuse me, levels of service reductions and fare increases are pretty much inevitable. I agree with Steve's characterization of saying that Music City Circuit really has problems as far as service goes. And those are people who are really not transit dependent. A lot of those are tourists. Felix basically came up with 35 to 40%. I think that sounds about right. I think you should be focusing on the people who are mostly transit dependent, who really are relying on your service. Tourists can have other options, but a lot of people here today don't have that option. And so I think I support your proposal. I will say this, though, as far as the fare increase goes, I would respectfully ask that you make it a temporary fare increase from August 2019 to August 2020, excuse me. And the reason I say that is it gives the council and the mayor a chance to take some corrective action on this, because this was not a well thought out budget proposal. I think everybody can pretty much agree to that. You can't expect any department head to go out there and take out over 10% of their operating budget. It just doesn't work. And so I think you have a lot of support in the community. I think there'll be some changes. So I would just respectfully request that you would amend the proposal, that it be a temporary fare increase from August of this year to August of next year. And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here today. Nancy Lee Holmes? Oh, okay, you have it. Thank you.
I'm glad y'all called this meeting today and I was able to come. But I almost couldn't make it because I had $20 and trying to figure out how I'm going to get this $20 change if I put my money in there, and what am I going to get back? Am I going to get a card back? And I'm not only speaking for me, people other than me. They just went up on my rent because my granddaughter went back to work making $1 more, okay? So my rent increased. Well, I got to pay $410 out of $771, not including I spent almost $200 on SS Ride. to get me to church, to school, grocery store, where else. And I have to say, God, I need you to help me make it through the month because there ain't going to be no other way that I'm going to make it. So now I'm faced with another crisis and not faking it, but it's real. The saying, am I going to have to cut this part of church out? Am I going to go to school? Or am I going to get groceries because I'm a diabetic? Just was diagnosed with cancer, even though I'm cancer-free, and don't have Part A, and they cut my insurance where I can't get surgery. I'm saying, where are we going? I am concerned. Nashville has gotten so huge and big. Yes. Well, how are we going to fix the problem? We need to get somewhere and pray and go to God and ask him for a solution. There is a problem. We cannot fix it on our own. Thank God for the board members. We need to lift them up in prayer because they got their hands tied. Where are we going? Where are we going? The rent sky high rocket, people leaving Nashville because things are running off the rocket. There's a cry in Nashville. Don't ignore the cry. How are we going to fix this problem? Only solution is God in prayer, because that's the only way. And we got to lift these board members up because they're trying to figure out where we're going with this. They need prayer. They need our hands. They need we lifting them up in prayer saying, hey, we got you. We got you. Because you don't have all the answers. You trying to find the answer, but trust me, you can count on me to take you in prayer because I know you need some answers. And the answers, you cannot get it on your own. Only God himself can give you the answer to all these problems that we all face in Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Mr. Milliner, Michael Milliner.
I didn't realize I had to go through a little doggy park to get
That's
here.
okay. Good afternoon, and it's good to see you.
And thank you very much for having this opportunity for the public to comment. My name is Michael Milliner. I'm with the Middle Tennessee Uplift Foundation. Our organization's mission is to combat poverty and the cycle of poverty through awareness and education. We're also a member of Connect Middle Tennessee, the Transit Coalition. I won't waste a lot of time. I'll get right to it. The number one thing that we're here to do is to support Jessica Dauphin, to support Mr. Bull, to support Adam Nicholson, who talked about dedicated funding being the solution. That obviously this year's budget fiasco demonstrates so very well the courage that is taken on the part of the executive team of WeGo, its staff, its board members, to come and deal with tough issues in a very practical way. I would hope dedicated funding would render unnecessary at some point in the future as we are able to plan progressively and successfully down the line to maintain a level of service that keeps up with what is now a disproportionate race that is being run here in the great city of Nashville. And that race, of course, is between the haves and the have-nots. And certainly, the demonstration of such decisions coming down on those who are the most vulnerable, those for whom transit is the ultimate safety net, is an indication of the struggle and the battle that we're all engaged in here. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the 138,000 riders over the first quarter of this year who took advantage of the Blue Line. And certainly, even if 35% of those are tourists, at least another 75,000-80,000 of our people who are trying to get to work, who are trying to get to child care, who are trying to get the school appointments as parents. Those folks who are just on the edge there, definitely trying their best. And service in North Nashville, reverting back to a fare-based service, while it may make the kind of economic sense that balances this budget, it certainly is going to create an imbalance if you go forward in the health and social welfare of the people who depend on it. Again, I thank you very much. I want you to know I also have the Urban League's proxy standing here, and we appreciate the work and the dedication. And I'll say this to you, Steve. You're a person who takes the people into account. And I've told you that personally, and I'm not afraid to tell you that here publicly, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Milliner. Appreciate your being here. Our next three up are Emery Hertz. Did I get that right? Patrick Nizar and Lindsay Ganson. Lindsay. She's back.
Yeah.
Emery.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm Emery Hartz. I'm speaking also on behalf of Transit Now Nashville. I'll reiterate that we do thank you guys for taking the care and time to listen to the public comments and address those comments here today and make the necessary changes. We know that you guys are kind of under the gun and making tough decisions, and that's why we have the stance of wanting a more dedicated funding mechanism to help and grow as well as support the growth of our city. We are also in support of Access Ride, and that's another important tool, and so that's great to hear that you guys are implementing that. So again, thank you all.
Thank you for coming today. Is it Nizar?
Yes.
Patrick,
And
welcome.
thank you so much for having me. Now, if I could just figure out where this thing is, I'll be in great shape. So we can- thank you so much. It takes a lot to make this person go. Good afternoon, and can
Good
everybody hear me?
afternoon. Yeah.
Great. First, my name is Patrick Neiser, and I live at 557 Piccadilly Row in Antioch. And I would like to thank the board for all of its work. I have been a Nashville resident since my days in graduate school here. This town made me, to be honest about it. So I want to thank you for that. And I rise in support of the current plan as is, with the $2 bus fare, the $4 access ride fare, and the $7 on-demand fare. And the reason is pretty simple. I'm not going to rehash things that everybody already knows. The board knows the numbers better than I do. And everybody knows here that we need dedicated funding. Everybody knows that. But I want to talk about the vision that you guys did that a lot of cities haven't done. One of the things that needs to be kept in mind here, as for example, Access Ride is county-wide. Not a lot of places do that. I think there's 2. County-wide means that after graduate school, I could start a business and go from one corner of this town to the other. County-wide costs money. The responsibility to have county-wide costs money. I'm sorry, I wish it didn't, but it costs money. Don't pull Access Ride out of the discussion. If it's going to be county-wide, we need to shoulder the responsibility of it being county-wide. A lot of my friends from other cities have come here because it runs from 4:45 a.m. to 11 p.m. when other buses don't run. We need to do our part. And we need to remember about our brothers and sisters who are not counted in the stats, who are persons with disabilities who ride the bus. We know very little about them. It's hard to track who they are. But I know a lot of them ride that 77 bus to go to the hospital over at the Vanderbilt Clinic. You guys are in an unenviable position. But if we're going to make hard choices, if we're going to demand that we need more money, then first it starts with responsibility to us. I'm willing to pay the $4. In closing, I used to pay cash for a lot of things. This morning I had to. That's why I still have this beard, because I had to go try find cash this morning to pay the carrier who did my work, or who's going to cut it. It cost me $36 just to pay him, and that did not include the beard cut because he wasn't there. Not a lot of people could have absorbed that. You guys made me. This town has the transportation vision that it takes to make a city. Don't hand it over because of short-sightedness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Ms. Gannon.
I'm Lindsay Ganson. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications for Walk Bike Nashville. I'm reading a statement today on behalf of Connect Mid-TN. Connect Mid-TN is a coalition of more than 30 organizations and businesses, many of which you've already heard from today, including Music City Riders United, Vanderbilt University, AARP, Greater Nashville Realtors, Middle Tennessee Uplift Foundation, Nashville Civic Design Center, Urban Housing Solutions, Urban League of Middle Tennessee, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, and about 20 other businesses and organizations. Our members share a vision for reliable, equitable, affordable, and diverse transportation options for all Middle Tennesseans. Connect Mid-TN's actions focus on near-term transportation access improvements, dedicated multimodal transportation funding, and policy reform. Connect Mid-TN believes that transit is a critical connector to economic opportunity and enhances the quality of life for our citizens. As Nashville grows, our transit system should be expanding so that more Nashvillians have access to the opportunities that growth brings and our city remains equitable and affordable. This, as many others have already said today, this year's budget cycle is an example of why we need a dedicated source of funding for transit. WeGo completed the in-motion long-range plan in 2016, but implementation is falling farther and farther behind schedule. We need a dedicated revenue source for transit so that long-term transit plans can be implemented to support access to economic growth for all communities. Until there is another referendum for a dedicated source of funding for transit, we hope that when our mayor and Metro Council members are faced with difficult budget decisions in the future, transit remains a priority. Thank you all. Thank you to the board.
Thank you for being here. Our next three up are Katonia Smith, Sam, I'm not certain how you say your last name, and Darius Knight.
My time already started?
You're good.
Okay.
You started.
I wanted to touch bases about a couple of things that people said. So, Music City Riders United does a lot of outreach on the buses and on the bus stop. At the bus station, sorry. We talk to bus riders, so I know it's a budget crisis. I understand that. It's a lot of bus riders that are going to be affected by the cuts that are being decided to be cut. And some of them they have high ridership, and, people depend on them to go to school, hospital, so far on. I feel like that, it's some other ways around it, some type of way. I don't know if it could be the funding or not, but y'all should go out there and talk to those riders and see how affected they're going to be by. Because, it's some buses that don't have high ridership that's not going to be affected. It's some buses that go in wealthy neighborhoods that's not going to be affected. But it's people that live in low-income neighborhoods and they are working-class people that are going to be affected and may have to lose their job or suffer on by these cuts. A lot of people are going to suffer from this. And then just also, I know Music City Riders did an action for us, the NES bus stop, which was last year. I seen a comment from the last board meeting where a man was saying that, the disabled people are suffering trying to get there. And that was one of the statements we made. Angelique is legally blind and she uses y'all kiosk system and it is crappy. So, seriously, these people matter. Transit matter to them. They depend on transit. And this is affecting a lot of people. I feel like you should go out and talk to the people that ride the buses, the people that spend their money on the buses and not just go off these numbers that y'all go off of. It should be the people that, like they said, that make Nashville. Like that lady said, she's finna go through a whole lot. Like, she depends on transit, not the tourists. The people that been here all their life is the people that we should focus on, or y'all should focus on. And I go out there and talk to them people at least almost every day. These people are going to suffer. And I feel like we should think about some other ways around, the cuts, certain cuts. And I'm grateful that y'all keeping the 77, the 100 Oaks, because that's a big ridership, but y'all should think about or go out and talk to the riders.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Sam? And if you could please pronounce your last name for me.
I wanted to hear you try it at least.
You want me to try?
It's pronounced Petula.
Petula. Petula?
Petula, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
1 second. I wanted to say thanks to the board today for the opportunity to speak. And I don't think I can really, a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, and a lot better than I really ever could by folks who are facing some of these things directly. But I wanted to say that I think everyone here in this room right now is on the receiving end of a dispiriting decision, I'm not the first one to use that word, by elected officials like Nashville Mayor David Briley and the Nashville Metro Council to cut the transit budget by 10% in real terms. At Music City Riders United, where I work and where Catania also works, we do see y'all at WeGo trying to make these cuts hurt as little as possible. We see y'all working on that, and we appreciate that. We also see WeGo responding to some issues that we had highlighted in the original cuts as they were outlined. We see you all responding to that too. We see y'all working to maintain the access to 100 Oaks and the medical services there, and maintain some of those midday and Sunday access options on certain routes that our members were concerned about, and we appreciate that too. But I think the question now for everybody in the room is, how are we in Nashville going to make our elected officials stop putting WeGo and bus riders in this terrible situation of deciding which benefits we have to give up and which benefits we have to cut? Which benefits are going to be taken away? We see a transit system having its hands tied and its decisions made for us by elected officials who get really creative when it comes to finding money for the world's richest corporation, Amazon. We found $102 million for them and $14 million for a private water park at Opryland Resorts. But suddenly they can't find literally a single dollar in extra additional funding when we face all of these budget cuts and our bus riders protest these budget cuts. I'd like to encourage everybody on the board and all users of public transit in Nashville to consider why we are forced to have this conversation today about what's going to get cut. Who is it that's making that happen? Because that's a choice. That's a choice that our elected officials are making. They're forcing us to have a conversation about what we're going to give up instead of giving us an opportunity to talk about what we can add, which I think is what every single person in this room wishes was the case. So why do we have to have these conversations? Who is cutting the budget for transit services, and why are they doing that? Which Nashville politicians are deciding to cannibalize public services for working Nashvillians in order to turn around and give lucrative handouts to multinational corporations? We need to address these problems in any way that we can, so that instead of talking about what gets cut, we can sit here and talk about the future and what services are going to get added. We all want to see those extended access options, those extended hours, better services all around. I hear a lot of people talking about problems that need to be fixed, but our hands are ultimately tied as long as we're subjected to these continuing budget cuts.
Thank you. Your time's up. Mr. Petula, right?
Petula.
Petula. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Mr. Knight.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
First thing I want to say is, I don't know if anybody thought about this, but August 1st is when these changes will take effect for the fair, but nobody's paying attention to the election day, which is also August 1st. So I was going to ask this board for them to delay that price effect on August 1st for August 2nd, so that it is not looked at as we're keeping certain types of areas or people from getting to the election booth to actually vote on August the 1st. Secondly, I would like to address this repeated issue. Now, these drivers, your maintenance staff, they're hurting. So I want the customers to understand that yet we are going through certain types of situations and having to pay more, but these drivers and these people who are actually working on the buses, they're going through just the same thing. Because when the council and the mayor do this to the budget, it also affects them as well. They're actually having to work overtime. I've actually come across a few drivers who have told me they have worked overtime and still have not been paid. So for me, that's a concern for me, because if the drivers are not getting paid by the certain time and it has gone over a month into 3 months and they're still talking to these staff members about not getting paid, that's saying to me that if money is not going to these drivers to handle their actual pay for overtime, then what's really going on? Why are the buses still in disarray when we keep having this conversation from 2015 all the way up until this point? I've heard somebody mention about trash on the floor. I've been saying this for the last several board meetings, but yet I still have not seen these buses fixed or cleaned. So I would just like to say this. If you're going to go up on your customers, if you're going to cut routes, you better make sure that on September 29th, every single 40-foot, 35-foot, and 60-foot bus and access ride van is in tip-top shape. I'm not joking, because if I come to the board meetings in September and we have that same discussion and the problem is still there, there's going to be a problem. Because then I'm going to go back to the same council members that I have been talking to within these last 3 weeks. I'm going to ask them what their issue is. And hopefully we will have a new mayor on August the 1st. One who will actually respect transit, respect the CEO of We Go Public Transit and its board, who takes the time out of their schedule to come here and, as you can see, fighting for us. So I would like to say, give their staff a round of applause for at least thinking about us, because they could have just said, forget it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you so much. My name is Councilwoman Delicia Porterfield, and I represent District 29 in the Southeast Nashville community. I would like to start off by saying thank you guys so much for your hard work and your dedication. I know that this is not an easy process. A few weeks ago when we voted on the budget, everyone was telling me that they did not envy my position of having to make a challenging vote, and I say that to you guys today. I know that this is very challenging. There were many of us, many council members, that advocated for you guys and advocated for that funding, and it is very hurtful that it did not go the way that we wanted it to go, and it is very hurtful when we are underfunding our transit system, when we have people in our city that are dependent upon transportation, and we're forced to have these conversations about cutting funding and cutting routes. So it is a very hurtful situation. I've been contacted by some of my constituents who've talked about accessing the transportation system and using the access ride services, and some of my constituents with disabilities who are calling and begging that there are not cuts made, and that you all are considering that when you're making the decisions. So again, I just wanted to thank you, because I see that you guys have committed to social equity, and that you've committed to making sure that these cuts are equitable, and to make sure that we are considering the most vulnerable in our population. So thank you for that, and please know that you guys do have allies that are working with you and fighting with you, and that are fighting to take care of the people in our city. So again, I cannot apologize enough that things didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, but know that we are still working to fight for you guys. So thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilwoman Porterfield, and thank you for being here today, and thank you for the work that you do for Metro Nashville. Thank you. The next three up, Sheila Hansen, Deborah Duncan, and A. Randolph. Does anybody need a handheld mic? Okay, when his turn. Okay. When I call his name, just if you need a handheld, just raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you.
Hello, Ms. Hanson.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I would like to thank WeGo MTA for having these meetings and letting us have our say. I don't understand the whole process of trying to get dedicated funding. I also don't understand why there isn't any. So if there's ever any kind of way that we can learn more about this, will somebody please let me know? That's number one. Number two, what was said about elected officials, I encourage everybody to do your research. See who is going to support us and vote for them, and vote out the people who don't support us. Mayor Briley is doing the complete opposite of what, when he was vice mayor under Megan Barry, what they were trying to do to improve it, that fell flat, and now he's doing the total opposite. I don't understand cutting a public transportation system in a growing city. Access Ride, I don't think their fare should go up to $4 when the base fare is going up 30 cents a ride for base fare, and Access Ride fare is going up 60 cents for the people who can least afford it. So I don't support the $4 raise. Okay. Thank you for saving Sunday service on number 25. I would like to ask that drivers not pass people up. I've been passed up twice recently by number 60 or 61, whichever one it is. I know you're cutting those services. Boo on that, but you don't have a choice there, I guess. But that applies to any bus driver. If someone's at a bus stop, they need to stop. Even if the person's looking at their phone, they might be looking at the bus schedule on their phone. So the driver number 1390, I think his name is Ed, is awesome. Everybody loves him. Just want to say that. And I think that's it. I do support what James Brown said about the monthly pass for access riders. My question is, how come that hasn't been happening already? So I think that covers it. I've heard other people say some of the things I was going to say, so. One last thing. Goodbye, scooters. Don't let the door hit you in when you go.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. And a point of privilege, you know, my dad was a bus driver and his name was Ed, so I'm all about those good Ed bus drivers. So, Ms. Duncan, every now and then you just got to give a shout out to your dad, right?
Yes. I'm Deborah Duncan, and I live at 1456 9th Avenue North here in Nashville.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic for me? Thank you.
Am I close enough now?
Now you are.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'm Deborah Duncan. I live at 1456 9th Avenue North, and I'm a Nashville native. And since 2007, I've been a bus rider. And I really appreciate the service and the way it does give me transportation to work or to a social life or shopping or whatever. When I saw some of the future things in the brochure, it was talking about doing away with the magnetic media and implementing a smart media. And I wondered when that was going to come into play, because it was saying that you would need to set that up. And would that come through customer service, or would it be something we would do ourselves through a smartphone or online? And then I'm learning today, by this being my first meeting to come to, just how you do hear the public. And over the years, I've noticed that your priority was to help people 2 jobs, but the 3 to 11 shift is not serviced when it comes to leaving the job. You know, you could get to work, but you can't get home. But the other 2 shifts can get to and fro. So as you grow, I hope that y'all will address people getting home on a 3 to 11 shift. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A. Randolph.
Hi, my name is A. Randolph. I live at 522 Belmore Place. I am a member of Music City Riders United. And for myself, I am most concerned about the cut in routes because I am a bus rider and a bicyclist. And so I rely on those routes to get where I need to go, especially in times like right now where I've broken 7 ribs and I'm not yet cleared to get on my bike again. And God forbid I break a leg and those routes get cut where I'd have to walk more, but I'd have a broken leg. So God forbid that ever happen. However, while I am most concerned for the cut in routes for myself, I'm also even more concerned about the raise in cost for all of my Nashville siblings that count every penny on their bus cost, on their bus fare. And for them to have to choose what need they have to cut because they can't get to it is terrifying to me. And so I'm concerned for my Nashville siblings. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. The next 3 up are Patricia, is it Valadares, Roger Wanick, and Danny Mosley. And it looks like Mr. Mosley, is that Mr. Mosley over there needs a microphone? Oh, Mr. Womack. Okay. Is Patricia here? Yes. Okay. You want to come up to the mic, or do you need a microphone, a handheld microphone? I don't know where to go. Well, she's bringing you a microphone. There's a mic. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, thank you for having us all here. Thank you for the board to giving us this opportunity to express our concerns. My name is Patricia Valladares, or Valladares, whatever way you want to say it. I have lived in Nashville for 11 years. I'm very proud to say that I have come to love this city like my own, even that I didn't grow up here. And I have been, since the beginning, trying to advocate and fight for people with disabilities. Being myself a person with disabilities, but thanks God I have had the strength, I have the support of my family to move up and do everything that I can in being an independent woman. Something that I was not able to do when I was back in my home country in Guatemala, in Central America. I had the opportunity to be that person here. And one of the reasons why I've been able to do it, it is because of Access Ride. Access Ride has given me, as many other people, the opportunity to be independent, to be able to go to work, to go to the movies, go to the doctor, go to visit friends, go to church, do anything that you need to without having to depend on your family or friends to take you in other places. Unfortunately, with this, what is happening in Nashville right now, because I am not going to say that it's to us, but it's in Nashville. Nashville is the it city. There's a lot of money coming into the city. There's a lot of money coming in with all the tourists and all the attractions and all these organizations and big things going on, but that money, we don't know where's it going at. That's why schools, transportation, and other services have been cut. It's not only the transportation services, but we know that schools, the teachers needed a more, a raise, and they couldn't get it. So we are all going to be suffering from these cuts, but hopefully the next mayor and the next people that we're going to be electing are going to be conscious and see that the money that comes in here to Nashville, it stays in Nashville so we can grow. The other thing, and I want to just really quick say, is that the minorities that we have are the ones that we use in Access Ride. I'm not talking for myself. I'm talking for the others that cannot do it, for the ones that cannot express their thoughts. But for them, just the way that the access ride is going to go up to $4, that means that it's going to be $36 a month in their budget.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is concluded. Appreciate your being here today.
Thank you.
Mr. Warnick, do we have a microphone for him? He's on this far side over here. As she brings you the mic, just want to tell you I love you sporting a Star V. Anchor down, right? Down. Another point of privilege, right?
All right. Good evening. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Roger Womack. I live at 5905 Mackey Street off Robertson Road. I'm an Access Ride rider. I'm a member of Middle Tennessee Council for the Blind and the Tennessee Association of Blind Athletes. And we have to use Access Ride. I've been coming to the meetings ever since last year. Starting in January or March, the fee was talked about going up to $370, and I understand the reason, and I don't have a problem with that. Even though with people with disabilities and fixed incomes and elderly would have issues of making ends meet, I understand there has to be an increase, but going up at the end of these meetings to $4, I have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with the fixed route services going up to $2. I use it also, and I would think that, the $370 would be, we can compromise and use that, people with disabilities, and get by with it. Hope that you'll use the $370. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service as board members, and I hope that you'll consider the option of leaving this, instead of keeping it at $370 or $4, whatever it will be, next fiscal year, maybe taking it back to whatever the council can fund. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Mosley.
Hello, my name is Danny Mosley. And if I seem like I'm talking loud, I am, because earlier and throughout this meeting, I have not been able to hear a whole lot. Because of the PA system or whatever the technical difficulties are. Again, I would like to say that a lot of people that have spoken before me have talked about issues that I have myself. I just want to reiterate on some. Mr. James Brown talked about the possibility of access riders being able to purchase a monthly access ride card like regular bus riders do. My grandson works downtown. We live in East Nashville, and he buys a bus pass every month. I would like to be able to do that, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that would like to be able to do that, but we don't have that option. Although I can ride the regular city bus after traveling 6 blocks, crossing Gallatin Road, which is almost a death wish, and and doing that manner there. But I really wish that WeGo Access would think about having a monthly bus pass. That would be helpful. Another thing that I would like to say that I've heard people mention the city council, the budget system, and the election coming up. One thing that I would like to ask Access Ride is whatever day election day is, do not raise the fare until the day after, because I'm an advocate for people getting out to vote. And I think this is an election here in Nashville that we really do need to vote. So that would be my request, and thank you for what you do for people like us. We genuinely appreciate it. Also, the on-demand ride, we love it. We want you to keep it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosen. The next three in line are Brad Brisky, Richard Forberg, Sheila Hood, and we might as well add the fourth on that one is Kenneth Van Buren. And if anybody needs a handheld, just raise your hand. Mr. Brisky?
Good afternoon.
Good
First of
afternoon.
all, I want to thank the board for giving everyone here and myself an opportunity to talk. I want to thank the board for your time and service and for sitting in your positions. Also want to thank the people who have provided comments today. It is humbling to stand here before the people that were bold enough to come out and are able to come out and to use the services to come out to make their comments heard. Also want to thank the staff of WeGo in the facilities and the operators for their service and dedication, especially being out in the public, not knowing what they may encounter through the course of the day. I also want to say that the people that have spoken today and myself, I would like to say that we are speaking also in part for those of us who do not have the boldness to come out or have the ability to come out. With all of that said, I have made my comments clear in written comments and through other in-person comments through one of the hearings. In specific, I have been a Hermitage, Davidson County resident for 2 years since I moved to Tennessee, and have during those 2 years been a loyal rider of the MTA. To that end, I enjoy riding the bus 27, and over the last 3 months have been very happy to have a little more stability with the operators driving that service. Unfortunately, that service is one of those that will be cut, and with 50 seconds left, I hope to tell you why I think that that is a short-sighted consideration. There are but 2 buses in the morning, 2 buses at night. For a good portion of the last year, the routes have been inconsistent, and unfortunately, not having the stability does not give credibility to the route itself, and also to that end does not give the stability for the ridership. And the riders, the schoolgoers, and people living in Hermitage need that service for their ability to come to Nashville. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brisky. Appreciate it. Mr. Forberg.
Richard Forberg, 258 Cherokee Station Drive. Thank you for having this meeting and this public comment period. Everyone in this room wants to see the MTA get dedicated transit funding. That requires a public referendum that means 50% of the vote passing a public referendum to raise taxes to provide that funding. My comment pertains to what it's likely going to take to get 50% of the vote when most of the people in this county, everybody in the county gets to vote, have a car. In fact, a vast majority have a car. I am on the Chamber of Commerce Moving Forward committees as a citizen representing various community groups, and what I pick up from other people as their interest and needs in this community. Currently, the official position of the Chamber of Commerce is to seek public funding, have that public referendum in the year 2024. It is also the official position of the Connect Mid-TN Alliance to seek that public funding in 2024. To me, that is much too long of a wait. I want to see it sooner. I believe that a couple of the people running for mayor would also like to see it sooner. That 2024 date, coincidentally, perhaps it is coincidental, lines up with Mayor Briley's comment when he took over after Mayor Barry that he was not going to seek public funding until his second full term of being elected. So that would be 2024, around there. So I want to point out that there are two other candidates of the four major candidates in these mayoral debates who are proposing to seek public funding much sooner. I can't say when. I don't want to mention their names. We don't want to be doing campaigning here, but Mayor Briley is not one of them. It's John and Cooper and John Ray Clemens, actually. I suspect between the two of them, they might want to have this public funding, this referendum, in 2020 or maybe 2021. Obviously, it takes time to get the voters ready to make a vote that would be favorable towards it. My belief is that if we're going to have the public vote for it, it has to have a credible chance of reducing congestion. It also has to have things we all know: speed. All the routes have to be fast and direct as much as possible. Cleanliness, comfort, frequency of route departures, like every 10 minutes. Reliability, ease of access, ease of use, not this complicated trouble we're having with other things, and comprehensive coverage. So let's work towards that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Forberg. Sheila Hood. Good afternoon, Ms. Hood. That's okay.
I live at 1413 Montgomery Avenue, and my concern is for 2830. And I walk out of my house every morning and catch the bus right there on Montgomery Avenue. And if y'all cut the McFerrin out, I'm going to have to walk down to Jones Avenue, Elimination. So I want to speak for everybody who rides the McFerrin bus to stick with me. Just give me some information. I live at 1413 Montgomery Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kenneth Van Buren.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Pastor Kenneth Van Buren. I stay at 2204 Buchanan Street, Apartment 7. And I am coming this afternoon to represent the Access Riders for North Nashville. And we have a very serious problem in North Nashville with MTA because we're having problems with bus drivers with bad attitudes, first of all. You get on the bus and say good morning to them and they don't speak back. They have nasty attitudes when you ask them questions. First of all, I heard all the people come before me talking about different problems in Nashville, but what we need is, we need a voice on this board for the people. And I don't think the people on this board represent the people. You represent the system, and we need at least 1 or 2 seats on this board that represents the passengers of Access Ride and the passengers of MTA bus routes that are affected by this raise you're getting ready to raise. And I think that in order for you to even put this raise into effect, we need to do 1 of 2 things. You need to either add 2 people to the board that's going to speak for the people, or add a referendum to the election coming up, and let us not only vote for a new mayor, but vote for a referendum from the people. Let the people's voice really be heard on the ballot, and vote for either a raise of the bus fare or vote against the raise of the bus fare. Because I've recently had to transfer from the MTA Transit to Access Ride, and I don't think $4 is going to be able to be paid by me, because I've had to cancel many of my doctor's appointments because I couldn't make it there because of the fact I didn't have the money to pay on this access ride. So I'm saying to you, those of you on this board, please, ma'am, please, sir, think about the people when you make the decision, because first of all, it's no need of you having all of these meetings if after we've voiced our opinions, you're still going to raise the bus fare. We need someone to hear us and hear us clearly. We are saying no. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your being here. That concludes the public comments forms that I have. Is there anybody else here who would like to make a public comment that did not fill out a form? There's a gentleman. Okay. There's two gentlemen in the front row. If somebody can bring them a mic and let them say their name. Mr. Green is there in the back. So those will be the last three public comments based upon the hands that went up in here. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Miss. Yes, thank you, Board, as well, for your work and your concentration and for your listening ability to all the many great ideas that are being served up today.
Can you tell me your name, please, sir?
My name is David Meador.
Thank you, Mr. Meador.
M-E-A-D-O-R. I'm a member of the Middle Tennessee Council of the Blind, and I'm also a member of NOAA. It's Nashville Organized for Action and Hope. So I'm very fortunate to be involved in the community, and I've spoken before the council before on various issues. And I think what is really needed, and all your comments are correct about the fares and also the service routes and so on, but it's really a paradigm shift, a new vision, if you will, as to what the public transportation system in Nashville really could be. If I'm not mistaken, I think there are roughly 100 new people coming in Nashville per day. That may be a figure that's understated or overstated, but we're growing. And my wife this morning, when she and I went out for breakfast down on the Thompson Lane area, first thing she said to me is that traffic is worse than ever. And I hear this time, day in and day out. It seems to me that the paradigm shift that we need is to make riding the bus attractive, fun, something that would allow people to relax a bit. That would take a big view. That would take parking areas that are kind of halfway between the suburbs and the downtown area so that people could come in, park their car, catch a bus within 10 minutes, have on the bus the access to the newspaper, maybe some electronics, so that it would be a fun experience. Now, that's going to take some new thinking, but that's my proposal. And so with that said, I hope that some new thinking will come to the table and could be supported by all of us to make this service correct, available, and fill up those buses from this day forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meador. Gentleman in the front row, you had your hand up as well that you would like to give a public comment. Are you able to go to the microphone? That would be great. And if you could state your name as well, that would be great.
They should know me. I never miss a meeting, but I've had surgery on my eyes, and just as soon as you miss something. I enjoy coming to MTA board meetings, and Brother Cersei, I'm 73. He's not too close or too far from that himself with schoolmates. But I just wanted to say one thing. Whatever you do, get your facts right. I heard a lady say, they finna cut out Meridian and McFerrin. No, they're not. They're combining McFerrin and Meridian. That's what the books say, and I haven't even been here, and I know they're not cutting it out. You always do your research. I know we're going through some pains right now, but if we all stick together and talk to each other, which don't look like nobody wants to do, but don't forget, you got that button coming up. Hit that button. Guy smile at you don't mean he's for you. Here's a guy trying to cut out people who are not able to get the bus, and you coming in my neighborhood, messing with my neighborhood, and I've been there 54 years, catching the bus on time, MTA doing what they supposed to do, and now you want to mess with the bus. It ain't gonna happen, not on my watch.
Sir, what's your name?
I'm James Fentress.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Ventress. Mr. Green.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Patrick Green. I'm the president business agent of the Amalgamated Transit Union, that's ATU, Local 1235. For the board, you all know we represent the bus operators and the mechanics and the cleaning personnel here for We Go Transit. Didn't plan to speak today, but I heard a few things that made my blood pressure jump about 30 points. But that's all right. So, first thing, go vote. Go vote. You can come jump on the board all you want to, but it's your mayor that puts forward the people that sit on this board. That's the first thing. So please go vote. Second thing, for the gentleman who said maybe he heard from an operator that they went 3 months without getting paid their overtime, I can assure you Steve Bland wouldn't get any sleep if that happened. That does not happen. Now, I am empathetic to your cause, to your plight, to this board. But as leaders, sometimes we have to deal with what we've been given. And some of us who grew up in households with 7 children in a single-family household, sometimes you have to make decisions when you don't have what you need. But the most important thing is that you take care of the people that live in the house. That's the first thing. Now, we have a mayor that has said that he supports transit. Well, you got a lot of people in this room. So those were just words, with all due respect to it. We also have people going out there touting to other candidates that they killed the transit referendum. Well, this is where we're sitting today. It's a lot of us that didn't agree with everything that was in the referendum, but we knew we needed money. We knew we needed money. So now we have people who are underemployed, working families, people who are transit dependent, right? Who are being punished because of the decisions of this mayor and the people who voted against this public transit referendum. That's where we are. Now these people are going to do the best they can with what they got. And we're going to do the best we can with what we got. And we push on. But go vote. Please go vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Well, I've been on this board a long time, and I think that might have been my longest public comment. Period. But I'm appreciative that so many people came today to sort of share their opinions and their comments and their thoughts about We Go MTA. So thank you all very much for being here. And in that closes our public comment section and moves us into the other parts of the agenda. I will ask my board members, do you need a break or you want to push forward? Let's go. Okay. So, Mr. Searcy, you're up first.
All right. We have action items. The first being first action item for the board to consider being our liability insurance renewal. We heard from the chief financial officer during the committee meeting that the insurance contract was up for renewal. We discussed the increase in that contract. We also discussed that the vendor that we are recommending we engage has been our vendor for some years prior and has been relatively sensitive to our circumstances and more responsive than other vendors. Therefore, it's recommended by our committee that the board authorize the chief executive officer to enter into a contract with RLI Insurance for our liability coverage for the period effective July 1, 2019 to June 30, 2020 for $3 million in coverage with a $100,000 deductible for a premium of approximately $884,220.
So if that's the recommendation of the committee, it doesn't require a second, but thank you down there. I appreciate that. So moved down there. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion carries. We have liability insurance. Thank you.
All right, our second action item is regarding the renewal of the Regional Transit Services contract for MTA/RTA. The committee heard the discussion during our committee meetings and now recommends to the board to renew first the contract for regional bus service and secondly the contract for connecting bus services supporting commuter rail. Thank you. Both of these contracts are for a period of 1 year beginning July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. Contract 1 for an amount not to exceed $1,704,470 for regional bus services, and Contract 2 for an amount not to exceed $175,174 for connecting bus services supporting Music City Star Service.
Thank you, Mr. Searcy, and that's the recommendation of the committee?
That's the recommendation.
Is there any further discussion, any questions? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
The next action item regards the contract renewal for state Easy Ride services. Based upon the explanation and the discussion, the explanation from staff and the discussion during our committee meeting, we now recommend the board to approve Nashville MTA to enter into a contract with RTA that calls for the MTA to reimburse RTA for Easy Ride trips provided to state employees participating in the Easy Ride program at the rate of $3.15 per ride for a period of 1 year, beginning July 1, 2019, ending June 30, 2020.
And that is the recommendation of the committee. Is there any further discussion? No. There being no further discussion, I love Easy Ride programs. They're so cool. We make certain people go from work. So thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Easy Ride program, the motion carries.
And the final business of operations and finance is a recommendation from the board to authorize the CEO to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Metropolitan Government of Nashville, Davidson County, and its Department of Information Technology Services to fund a new full-time equivalent position for Information System Advisor 2, serving as an Oracle database administrator for up to 3 years for a not-to-exceed amount of $534,000 over that 36-month period. Funding for year 1 of this position is available within the Fare Collection Upgrade Project capital budget. Funding for the position for years 2 and 3 will be allocated within the annual operating budgets for FY 2021 and FY 2022.
Thank you, and that being the recommendation of the committee, is there any further questions, comments, thoughts? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
That completes the work of operations and finance for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Searcy. That's a lot of work. Appreciate all your efforts. Ms. Miller, New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee. Oh.
I'm sure. Thank you. So very robust discussion for the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee. We have 2 action items on the agenda. The first is the authorization of the 2019 fare changes and service reductions and recommended adjustments. And I know we've had a long conversation about this. I would say today did conclude our public comment process. We had really great comments today. Thank you again to everybody who came today and gave us those comments. I think they were really meaningful for all of us. We also had about 600 other comments that were made in writing to the MTA and had about 200 people attending public meetings. So made every effort to hear as many voices as was humanly possible during this process, and they really did help guide the amended recommendations that you see today. And the most significant change from the original recommendation was that the fare increase be slightly larger than originally proposed. And it was tied to kind of 2 findings during the public engagement. One is the $1.85 versus the $2, that many customers for convenience would be putting the $2 into the fare box. So that was one of the driving factors that we heard a lot of in these public comments. The second was if we were to increase to the $2 fare, we can bring another $310,000 that can help bring back some of the cut services that we heard were pretty painful, including the Midtown route, midday service on the 77 Thompson connector, the late evening service on the 8th Avenue South. So that is how staff got to that amended recommendation. Based on that discussion, we had quite a bit of discussion at the committee level about the proposed increase on the access ride. The original proposal was to go from $3.40 to $3.70. The second proposal would take that to $4. So we've had some discussion about that, and if anybody on the board wants to amend the arrangement for that, then feel free to speak up on that as we speak. As of right now, the board does, the NICE committee does recommend that we accept the staff recommendation and the motion as approved to sent to the NICE committee, which would August 1st have a fare increase associated with the $2 base fare. The access on demand, which is really good news, would become a full service rather than a pilot for WeGo. The service changes on September 29th would go into effect with all the recommended eliminations and modifications. And then we're looking at phasing out the change cards, and so that would go at December 31st of 2020. So that was the recommendation of the committee to the board.
That being the recommendation, now requiring a second, I open it up for discussion at this point. Mr. Searcy.
The only amendment I would offer, and this is subject to whether it causes staff any additional chagrin, is that we do postpone the change from August 1st to August 2nd.
I know in committee we had some.
And I agree with that, but I want to go back to this. I would like to go back to this access ride increase. So we're talking about, as I go through this, and maybe some of my math is not exact, but we're talking about a 30-cent increase on the direct route fares and a 60-cent increase on the access ride user. If an individual, so that's double the burden. You can calculate the percentages if you want to, but the ultimate thing is it's 60 cents instead of 30. If an individual takes 15 trips per week, that's an additional $9. or $39 a month. If you take an individual that makes $800 a month, that's an additional 5% of their income. Whereas currently, under that math I just explained, a person on a fixed income of $800 a month, they're currently paying nearly 28% of their income now in income. I just think that a 5% increase on those individuals is an unfair burden for what the benefit is, right? If we're talking about going from $1.85 to the $2, that brings in another $310,000, right? If this is a lot, again, this is a lot of math here, but if your comments that the access ride brings in about 10% of that, that's another $31,000. So we're talking about going up 30 cents, just not 60 cents. So half of that 30,000 is about $15,000. I don't think that the $15,000 generated outweighs the benefit of that thing. My math may be completely incorrect. Somebody may correct me, but that's what I think. And I think it benefits. Sure, I hear it. I get it. But with that amendment, I think we benefit everyone. We hurt no one. And it's not that same thing on the other way around.
Mr. Searcy.
Yeah, I would just like to respond to the proposed amendment. First of all, I'm not going to oppose it, but I do want to say this. I am that fixed income person who's in a wheelchair. I'm that person. And I also know that people who are not on fixed incomes, or people who work, who leave the house on a day-to-day basis, who would be impacted most by the increase, are not on fixed incomes. They are working. They are earners. And so that we need to look at the totality of the impact on the communities that we're talking about. Now, it's difficult to fathom exactly what these impacts are. So I don't have a real beef. If we go back to the $3.70 as opposed to $4, then I can live with that. But I am very sensitive to those persons in my community, the challenged, physically impacted community, who say we're ready to burden our own share. And you don't have to be necessarily looking out for us in ways that are not consistent with our realities. All right, that's it.
I very much respect your perspective, and I guess
I know you do.
Very, very much. In fact, my only point was that it's a 30-cent increase for both fixed route and for access route, which to me is the most fair way.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So what I recommend you do is vote on Walter's amendment first, his motion on the August 2nd to amend the motion before the committee, before the board, and then maybe have Glenn make a motion regarding his amendment.
So we have a motion in front of us to amend the recommendation of the committee that the fare increase starts on August 2nd instead of August 1st. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Is there any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
I think we should call it Darius's amendment. That's my only thing. Call it Darius's amendment.
So we also have a second amendment, and that motion is to amend the recommendation of the committee to set the access ride fare at the original recommended amount prior to going to public comment at the one ride $370, the one ride access on demand $650. So we have a recommendation to modify, no, we have a motion to modify the recommendation of the committee. So is there a second?
Madam Chair, let me just stop you right here. I think, Glenn, is this correct, that your motion was only about access ride and not on demand? Is that right?
Oh, okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, we'll strike what I just said. And
That was a good catch.
And I thought that's what you said, so I'm glad you...
that's good, okay. And I apologize.
So in
And, you
other
know,
words, I
nothing
think-
like having a good secretary down there to help you along.
I think the motion is to allow the $2 base fare chart with the exception of access ride, and that rate would be $3.70 instead of $4. Does that sound like?
That's my motion.
Okay.
That is his motion. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed?
One abstention.
And there is one abstention. So the motion carries. Now we go back to the recommendation, correct?
Correct.
I'm on my Robert's Rules of Orders. I'm good. So there's a recommendation with the two amendments, and the recommendation does not require a second.
Correct.
So any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay.
One more. Last action item for the New Initiatives Committee is a simple proposed adoption of a continuation budget. We felt like we could not approve a budget until we got through this discussion and knew what the fares would be. So this is just a motion to continue under the current fiscal year budget until July or August, when we can factor all of this in. And that was the recommendation from the committee.
Being a recommendation of the committee, is there any further, not requiring a second, is there any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. 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 The motion carries. Woo. Does that conclude your report? You sure now? You sure don't have a couple more things we need to go through? Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. And Ms. Miller, congratulations on your reappointment to the MTA WeGo board that was approved in council last week. It's a pleasure to serve with you.
You too.
I look.
Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. So the chair's report. I don't have a lot to say other than, you know, equity is hard work. It's really hard work, and I cannot be more proud to be on this board at this moment, at this time, because the work that had to be done for today's meeting was really about paying attention to the detail, working hard, and listening to citizens of Nashville. I think the staff did, you know, we called it surgical, and I think it was surgical. I think they dug deep to make certain that they found the best solution to the situation that we found ourselves in. So I'd like to give them a round of applause and say thank you. And Steve, your leadership has been exemplary, so thank you very much. My fellow board members, you all are great. You're courageous. You work hard. You pay attention to the details, and you listen and you understand. And as someone said here early today, do your research. You did your research, and you worked hard, and you helped to guide the staff and Steve to be able to present today. No, it wasn't the best situation that we found ourselves in, but I think based upon what we were given, we worked as hard as we could possibly work to come out with a solution that hopefully will keep our riders in a place that is good for all, for now. But hopefully more dollars will come through in the future, and we will just continue to grow and enhance WeGo Transit, and I'm proud to be a part of this board. Other than that, I do think that I want to thank the public. I mean, I think you all are here, you've been all in today, and you have given us comments and direction and being able to help us make a difference. So thank you all for being a part of the process. We deeply appreciate it. And with all that being said, I turn this over to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. And I particularly want to thank you, even beyond today or the last week or two, as I know we've had extensive discussions on particulars of the proposals. Please make no mistake, more time than the 2 hours they're here today was spent by this board in considering the decision, and I know that none of them take it very lightly. I also want to join our chair in both congratulating and thanking Janet for her reappointment. She did her hearing at a particularly challenging time in front of the Rules Committee, and we were joking that this time she actually went through on a unanimous recommendation of the committee due to sort of an oddity in her last appointment. It wasn't unanimous, but not because of her.
Note that for the record.
So we appreciate that. Again, we mentioned it during Walter's report. I wanted to call your attention to the list of upcoming procurements in the committee packets. It's our goal to make our procurement process as inclusive and as expansive as possible. So if you're aware of any vendors or contractors in the particular fields we're seeking, please let them know about the availability of those solicitations. We are advancing our neighborhood transit centers project, making good progress, particularly on Clarksville Pike. Particularly noteworthy, and I want to congratulate Julie and her staff. We actually got a notice of environmental decision from the U.S. government this past week, which really allows us to go further into project development and makes that project eligible for the use of federal funds in its advancement. As you all know, we're in the process of putting together an application under U.S. DOT's Build Act program, hopefully to gain some significant funding toward the development of that project. I'm very appreciative, as I know the board was, to have Council Lady Porterfield here. She was one of a number of council persons who advanced an alternative budget proposal with significant additional funding for transit, and we understand the challenges in the budget process, but I'd be remiss, because we had dozens of phone conversations with individual council people who frankly struggled over this issue. So in addition to Council Lady Porterfield particularly, I want, without trying to call attention to, I know I'll leave somebody out, which will offend somebody, but particularly Councilmember Colby Sledge was instrumental in really trying to put together a compromise. Members Anthony Davis, Erica Gilmore, Brett Withers, Freddie O'Connell, Berkeley Allen, we're all extremely supportive. And we know... Yeah, and Taneka Bircher in particular in adopting it into her alternate proposal, were extremely instrumental. And the feedback I got after the alternate budget proposal vote failed was, let's go get them next year. So the conversation is not over with. I want to join everybody in thanking the members of the public who were here today and who participated in our hearings. So thank you. But I also have to ask you for one more bit of assistance. We do not live under the false illusion that all 32,000 of our daily riders know exactly what's going to happen or are as engaged as you all have been. So frankly, after today, the staff attention turns from making recommendations and decisions to getting information out, trying to educate the public about their options. So please, as you're riding the system, let people know what's happening and the time frames. Please refer them to our website or other collateral material. We'll have folks doing outreach between now and September. I was speaking of council. I want to thank Rita and Eric Byer for putting together 2 candidate forums. So we got to speak to a couple dozen anyway. I'm not sure. There's probably about 100 people running for council. But we got to speak to at least 2 dozen of them. And very good questions, very good takes. So that is always a great opportunity. Earlier this week, we hosted our Federal Transit Administration Region 4 staff. They had the opportunity to tour several of our projects like Murfreesboro Road, the Nestor project. Frankly, when we took them to Nestor yesterday, it was my first time to see second floor. And Gail, I'm going to encourage that we try to do a field trip maybe July or August to tour the Nestor facility again. This past month, we graduated our second Leadership Academy class, so 12 of our operations supervisors and middle managers participated in all sorts of professional development activities, problem solving. I want to thank Rita and Dawn and Monica for all their support of that program. Rita, I know it's a particular passion of yours to develop our young and future leaders, because God knows I'm not getting any younger. So that's really important. And I always bring you up to speed on RTA items. Not too much to report this month. Working with consultants from HDR Engineering, who are advancing a study of the STAR to see how we might make improvements in that facility, both short, medium, and long term. And I always like to end on a positive note, and I see him in the audience, so I want to let the board know. In fact, I'm going to make a public announcement today. It hasn't gone out yet, so I'm sure Rita and Julie and everybody are going to freak out. You all know Trey Walker in our engineering and project management division has been doing a great job, doing a little bit of reorganizing. Effective July 1st, Trey will become our chief engineer. And along with those responsibilities for engineering and construction, he will have under him all WeGo facilities. So if the elevators aren't working right, when the water fountain isn't working right, when the escalator's down, Trey, raise your hand and let the folks know. So all y'all who've been calling me at all hours of the day and night, Trey will be handing out his cell phone number at the conclusion of the meeting. So. Unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Are there any questions of Steve? Well done, Steve. Thank you very much. And I'd be remiss if I did not thank Monica and Rita for putting together the meeting here today and making certain that we had enough space and the opportunity for everybody to be comfortable at our meeting today. So I appreciate both of you for doing that. And I feel badly I didn't say it in my report, but I didn't forget. So it's good. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? We good?
Correct, Brother Finch. He's several years in advance.
Oh, he's several years. Nothing like a good friend to call you out when you least need it. So before we go any further on calling somebody out and throwing shade places we shouldn't, let's just say thank you all very much for being here, and we go. Out. We adjourn. We go out.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.